Here we are, Chew.
What up, everybody? We'll double check, make sure everything is going like it's supposed to. I have a hunch. This was my thought that this is probably going to be our smallest live broadcast. Last time I
Okay.
think we had like 100 or something.
Yeah.
Like for pretty much the whole point. Side control scapes really aren't that fun of a subject to talk about,
Pretty
right?
important though, right?
It's super important, but it's not fun to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody unless you got some weird squirrely thing, like usually it's one of those things.
Yeah.
It's like hand fighting.
Yeah.
People like when you got it, it's like it takes your game to another level.
Yep.
You love having it, but it doesn't necessarily lend itself to being exciting. So,
Once we're waiting for people to hop on, why don't we say hello and thank you to our sponsors and whatnot, and we'll just do that first.
for sure. First off, thanks to Charlotte's Web. CBD, they support the podcast. If you guys have ever listened to us, then obviously you know this. I like Charles Webb CBD. It's part of my supplement routine in the evening when I'm going to sleep to try to assist for recovery. You know, a lot of you guys get this. The older you get, the more recovery you're focused on, and it's one of the supplements that's in the mix. You can check them out at charlottesweb.com. The promo code is Jiu-Jitsu30 for 30% off the order. Also, thanks to our buddy Matt at Epic Roll for supporting the podcast. If you want to check out some good quality gear, great customer service, cool designs, check out his website, epicrollbjj.com. Great rash guard shorts. I wear his rash guard and shorts almost every day. I get his stuff made for my gym now with the rash guards and shorts. But again, great t-shirts, gis, whatever you're looking for, epicrollbjj.com. Code is Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off the order. If you guys want to support the podcast directly, you can go to the patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And guys, if you want to get my daily email, you can do so on that link, jiu-jitsu.net/join, JOIN. When you sign up, I'll send you a daily email. You can unsubscribe at any time. So with that said, guys, let's jump into this podcast today. So we're rapping about side control escapes. So if you guys listened to the podcast last week, we did a podcast and we were talking about side control escapes. And then today, I figured we go a little bit more into it and just do it again. Again, the side control escapes are one of those situations where they're not necessarily exciting. It's not something that, nobody goes in and goes, yes. Like, well, let me take that back. You do when you start escaping, right? But nobody let's say, for instance, if you're looking for stuff, I mean, like you can look at like the search analytics. It's like it's there for sure, but like everybody loves submitting other people. I mean, it's the end goal, right? But sometimes it gets overlooked. It was like I was talking about this with we had Michael Pixley at the gym the other day. We just did a podcast with him. 2-time college champ. He was an NAIA wrestling national champ, and then he went on to win the Division II. And he's also ADCC trials champ. Monster of a person, right? Monster grappler or whatever else. So we were talking, and it's talking about the importance of like hand fighting.
Oh yeah.
Because a lot of times, like it's one of those things where it's boring. No one really cares. Everybody wants to see the big slam, double leg, whatever. But a lot of times it's that's really important to setting up your takedowns. And one of the things that I found in my own jiu-jitsu is that when you have a good ability to escape, your offense becomes so much better. Because like what really holds people back, if you've ever competed, if you're just in the gym rolling and you're playing off of your back, and think about it, right? When you're on top, if you try to go for a submission from top, maybe you're in mount, what lingers in the back of your head for a lot of people, myself included, when I was younger, what lingers in the back of your head is a what if they get out of this? What if they get on top of me? What if I'm smashed on the bottom and this is the rest of the roll? Or if they submit me, right? We don't like to go through it. And so a lot of times it hinders people because they can't just pull the trigger, go for things, and just be almost, I don't want to say reckless, but be completely free to attack because they're hindered by the fear of being smashed from side control. And so side control is one of the first positions that like you really have to nail it down as far as the escapes and your ability to survive, because it unlocks a lot of potential in your game. And it's like a safety net. Also for you guys that are coming in, if you guys can go ahead and I was checking to make sure it's working. Let me know where you guys are coming from, because we got the chat going. Let me know where you guys are hailing from, and we'll chat with you guys as time goes on. Now, as the podcast goes on, we'll talk about side control escapes, and then at the end we'll do some Q&A, and we'll do some some gifts to give away. Also, by the way, if anybody's listening to this and you did a previous giveaway, a previous gift giveaway, there was the last one we did. I was very busy. I was in the middle of going through, it was a good thing, very good thing, but was very busy. We'll maybe talk about it later. For you guys, if I missed your giveaway gift, send me a message in the same manner that you did previously. Because it'll show me your previous message where you're like, hey, I won this thing. Send me a message like you did previously, and I will make sure that I get the gift to you ASAP.
Where do you want them to send it?
Wherever they sent it last.
Okay, so last time we did gifts, you sent it to the Jiu-Jitsu podcast at gmail.com.
So if you did not get your gift from me last time, then send it up to me again, and I'll make sure that you get what you need.
Yep.
So
Chewy, I wanted to ask you do you think as far as escaping,
do
you think side control is the most difficult position to escape from?
So I just see someone posted that they found someone said they found side control escapes more difficult early on than mount.
Yeah, I didn't even see that. I was just thinking about it. I didn't even see that question.
I was the same. So like here's where my side control escapes really got better was my buddy Jason. I talked about this in the last podcast, but with you guys we'll do it again. My buddy Jason Keaton he had a really good side control. He was a judo black belt and a jiu-jitsu black belt. So he has like great pinning ability. We'll have him on the podcast sometime soon. And when he would get me in side control, it was just like death. He would just lay there and pin me and I couldn't do anything. And so for me, a lot of times I've found that when I was in the bottom of mount, I could typically bring my hands together. And if you really think about it, there are some ways to stop this, of course, but if you can get both of your hands together, in the bottom of mount, you're in a really strong pushing position. And if many of you guys have ever experienced this, it can be really tough to hold mount unless, of course, you isolate the arm. So in the bottom of side control, when they get chest to chest, the person's off center and it's very tough. You don't really have the best pushing angle for them. And it's really tough. You have to bring the person out of balance first. And that's one of the reasons why I think for side control for a lot of people early on, it's really tough for them because they don't know how to off balance the person. They don't know how to get them out of the position, so to speak. Because they get stuck. And that's one of the things where if you want to be good from side control escapes, you have to have the ability to get that person posting on the mat, get them moving so you can create some space for yourself.
Yeah. The less weight they have on you, the better.
That's right.
That allows you to move. So Chew, let's get into it. Let's, what would you say your approach is, when you're trying to escape or when you're trying to escape side control? What's your approach?
So when I'm trying to escape side control, I think one of the big things, a couple things. One is that I essentially use like 3 or 4 escapes.
Yeah.
And that's it over and over again.
And chain them, right?
I chain them together and I use them in different ways. But here's the thing that I've found that a lot of times is lacking for people with their escapes is that when they do their escapes, everything's like a one and done. You try one escape and if it doesn't work, you're going back to smash. You're not chaining things together. And you're always looking for some new escape to solve the problem instead of saying here's what I already have. Let me try to use this. It's the same thing with other positions in jiu-jitsu where you think about other people and or other positions really. What do? You find something that works. And then what do? You keep using that. And instead of finding a million different things to work on, you find one way to use the same technique in different ways. Mm-hmm. I was just watching the Who's Number One tournament, right? Last night. He didn't win his match, but I'm always rooting for him. Jacob Couch.
That's right. Hillday Hammer.
Always rooting for him. Tough. I mean, Jonatas is Gracie's super tough.
He looked big too.
He's big. And he's done this before. He has a really good hips back guard passing game that's really tough for a lot of leg lockers. But one of the things that Jacob does really well is he has so many different ways to get under the legs. So you'll see him sometimes playing his half and everything else. And then he has a really great full guard entry into K guard into the leg locks. And so instead of so he's got a lot of different ways to use the same technique. And so that's one of the things that I do that was not necessarily taught to me, but it's something I use. And then one of the biggies, like I said, using those same escapes is starting everything early. So I can get out of a smashed position. Right. But one of the things very early on that I found, and again, it was never taught to me this way. Everything was always taught to me when you escape side control, you're flat on your back, the person smashing. Now we set up our frames. I'm not saying it doesn't work. And I have plenty of options for that. But what I found is time and time again, in my experience, it's so much easier to escape. Once you you have to learn, you have to know how the frames work, and the frames can kind of tell you whether or not you need to sort of go backwards and get ready for the next thing, or if you can keep fighting. but understanding that basically you learn how to sort of make a retreat back and essentially get to your escape before you're there. It's almost like a doctor, right? If you're trying to make sure you're taking care of someone, it would be better to treat the patient before they're like super, super sick, right? So like,
Yes,
you know what I mean? So
very,
like,
very good point.
you know, so like, I mean, again, especially as like we're getting older, right?
Mhm.
So we've got to get procedures done sometimes that old people have to get, you know,
preventative
stuff,
and maintenance.
right?
Some stuff's kind of
Well,
maintenance.
even just like blood work and stuff like that.
Sure.
We're doing stuff that we didn't do in our 20s. And the idea is that we do it so that we don't wait till the point where we have to go through really rough stuff to,
right.
So, and that's the thing, right? And that's something that a lot of times I think a lot of people in jiu-jitsu, or at least newcomers, they don't do. They don't basically address the problem early.
Mhm.
And so they wait till things get really, really bad. And then they're like, okay, how do I escape this position? It's like, it starts early.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the big parts of like with the way that I approach side control escapes is getting to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like one thing I see in white belts and beginners is that like they fight, they wait to like fight. It's like once they're flat, then they go.
Yeah.
It's like don't wait. The time to fight is when you're like still in that scramble. Nobody's solidified position yet. So that's like a really good point.
Well, and I did that back in the day. I wasn't even a white belt. I was like purple brown.
Really?
Yeah. So this is like one of the things where it's like, you know, as a coach, I was talking to one of the guys at the gym, Tom McKenna. We were talking about like being a dad, right? You're like, you're basically trying to set them up better than what you were because you like, I'm trying to help them avoid at least some of the mistakes I learned. So it's one of the things with training. I can like at the gym, I can make sure that like a lot of the guys don't fall into the traps that I did. And, you know, so I can break them of the panic. I can make sure they're addressing their side control escapes early, so forth and like that.
All right, Chew, I got another one for you.
Okay.
Escaping, is that a skill that you are taught in an instructional setting or is a skill that comes with experience?
I think it's both, right? Because again, like there's always the instructional part's really important because
Yeah.
it's good to know like what you're doing. I know that some people like, you know, some people don't like instruction, some people do, whatever. But for me, like it's good to know like the why I'm doing something, the how I'm doing it, how everything works. I like that part.
Yeah.
But again, at some point you have to put it into you have to put it into practice, right? Because I mean, you would say that, right? Like, I mean, for you have to, you don't really know the move until you've done it live.
100%.
Right?
Yeah,
you have to.
I think like using instructionals is you take it like you kind of get the bare bones, like kind of the framework, but then like all the details come in later. Like that's when you kind of get the basic like gross movements, but then like the details of the positions or placement of the hands, things like that can come with instructionals. And I think because then you can really focus, concentrate, take notes, however you learn, but that's when you can kind of solidify. But yeah, and then you take those elements and you can put it back into practice.
But even with your coach, like if not even just instructional courses, like videos, like I know that for instance, there was one move that I showed one day, I forgot what it was, but you and John Stone both like mentioned like, oh man, that was pretty cool.
Was it the back take one?
I think it may have been the back take. I showed something and you guys both were like, oh man, that's cool. And I remember John Stone is like, especially he was like, oh man, like he was kind of like making a thing about some of the details that like he was looking at.
I wonder what it was.
And I can't remember what it was, but I remember him saying like, you guys were both like, oh man, that's pretty cool. But he was especially like made a big stink about it, like in a good way.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, I've shown this to you before.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
and there's a certain point when you're a coach, when you're teaching, you basically start to, you have like almost in your head, there's like, here's the move, here are the 3 bullet points that I'm going to try to hit that I think are really important that whatever, you have it down. So I had that move down because I've used it a ton over the years. And, what happens a lot of times is like, when you think about it, it's like a really good book. Right. So like I've read through several books like multiple times. And when you read through them once, you sort of get a couple ideas, whatever. Right. And then let's say you read through it maybe 6 months, a year, 2 years later, whatever, you are in a different place. And so you notice different things. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's just, you're a different human being at that point. And so you see different things. And so a lot of times with our techniques, whether it's an instructional video or even, you know, just instruction in the gym, a lot of times, you know, like this is an example, a lot of people will sort of get bored when they see their coach showing something again, like, oh man, I already know that. It's like, but I get it. But like now it's a chance to improve where you could either you could look at the details. You might notice better details this time that you missed last time, or you could even use it to work on your weak side. Right. Because now it's another chance to improve, right? Rather than just say, I already know this. You know,
I'd kind of like if I watch a show or I've watched it a few times, I'll start watching different characters. I won't just watch the lead or the main character. I'll watch other stuff and you pick up like different reactions and like you almost like notice the background or certain things that are being set up. So I get it. That's like, it's just certain details, almost like you take them for granted. And then one day, like either you do the move on us and you hit it and you're like, what did you just do there? He's like, dude, I've been showing this thing. And it was, I'll tell you, one time it happened. This might not be the same one, but one time it happened was we were doing back attack, like back control, and then rear naked choke. And like you would take your arm out and then like punch it through. You'd hide your arm. And I was like, what the hell? When have you done that? And you're like, dude, I've been doing that forever.
That's it.
And so like I actually showed that today because it's one of the
best.
Did you? Yeah, because
cool,
it's awesome. Cool. Because like, how do people escape? Right? They control that arm and they start, moving the head, whatever they need to do. But like, if you hide that arm and you shoot it through really deep, it's like it gets that choke really deep real quick. So I was like, man, that's a cool detail, and I've stuck with it and I use it.
That's funny. Because like on my left, actually my left and my right arm, like I've got this callus built up from like sliding on the mat. I've actually got mat burn on my elbow from like basically coming up and sliding across. You starting to feel yours?
I've got one.
Yeah, you got yours too. It's
today.
Yep. So it's like you get it, and that's how you know it's there. But it's such a good technique. Got mat burn on the elbow.
Oh yeah.
I was talking to someone who was like, our bodies, like in jiu-jitsu, essentially deformed to they get deformed and like scarred to do the thing that we do. Like our ears are mangled. A lot of the guys that I know who have like worked with Eli, I'm like, I see their before and like pictures and stuff, and you can see like the off centerness of their shoulders, because we're typically dominant on one side or the other, right? And so you see this thing where you're like you're looking kind of off. It's like it's really interesting.
All right, Chew, here's another one for you.
All right,
what is the biggest misconception with escaping side control?
I don't think it's a misconception, but I think it goes back to the other thing that we talked about, is like that like side control escapes start when you're flattened. They're there. That's a part of it, right? Like it's a really important part. And some people are going to flatten you out and you have to have answers for it. But again, I think the biggest misconception, the biggest mistake that a lot of people make is that they wait till that moment. You know what I mean? Like, again, like anytime I get a person that's like, man, I'm really struggling with like side escapes. I'm like, all right, well, like basically we talk and it's like, what are you doing? You're getting flattened out and you're not doing anything. So I think that's one of the biggest issues that most people have with it. And if you can correct that and you know what to fight early and you know how to set up your escapes early, then the position becomes so much easier. I mean, like you will get, obviously you get flattened out and whatever else, but you can mitigate what they can actually get to. You can basically take away some of the stuff that they would have options for.
I think you talked about retreating. In a way, it's kind of like when you're realizing when you're losing the battle. And like, so, cause sometimes you'll see people hang on to a position as tight as they can. And then, a guillotine is a perfect example, right? Somebody hops over and they're still hanging on the guillotine, right? And you're like, you have nothing. You're gonna get von Flue choked if the person's on top. So it's one of those things, like maybe they fight the wrong areas or don't fight early enough, or just don't realize when they're like, hey, you're losing this battle. You got to regroup.
Yeah, well, even think about dominant position. Someone holds back. How many times have you seen this or even experienced it where you're holding back, the person starts getting their shoulders down, and instead of getting up top to mount and transitioning, you hold too long and the person gets on top of you. That was a mistake I made when I was younger, right? Pretty common. And so, there's a fun history thing. Like, do you know about King Pyrrhus? Greece? No. So there was when the Romans were kind of like on their early like up and up. Have you heard of the term Pyrrhic victory?
What is it?
A Pyrrhic victory?
A Pyrrhic victory. I don't know. I don't know.
All right. So
here we go. History lesson with you.
So basically, there was a time where the Romans were on their way up, right? Like they were still like relatively, just this little like state in Italy. Well, they hired, because there were some Greek colonies in Italy, and so they hired this Greek mercenary who was a king, had a fighting force or whatever. He's supposed to be this great warrior, and so they brought him over, right? I forgot how many thousands of men he had, right? So he fights the Romans, and he beats them up. It's like in several battles. I'll keep it short. Beats them up in several battles, and each time he beats them, like he's victorious, but like the thing the Romans had that probably was pretty significant for that time period is they had staying power. So every time they would lose, they would just go back and like get a bunch of new recruits. All right, we're going to fight you again. And they just kept doing it, where most places would capitulate. And so he keeps doing this, and eventually his army was dwindled down and he had to leave. And so they called it Pyrrhic victory after his name.
I see.
Right? So
history lesson with you.
Yeah. So essentially it's that same way, right? If you're in side control bottom, or you're fighting your guard and you hold too long in the escapes, even though you feel that person beginning to smash you and you're not, your frames are beginning to collapse and everything else, and you just don't make the adjustments to get to good defensive position, that's going to be a pyrrhic victory. You're going to use all your energy there. And then once you're flattened out, you're going to be too exhausted to do much. And that happens to a lot of people. Whereas if you made a retreat and said, okay, well, this isn't going to be a winnable situation. Let me back up a little bit and get ready for what's next. And that's kind of an idea I talk about a lot for jiu-jitsu, is you always want to know what's next.
Yeah.
Right. Because again, we think about that with our offense, right? Whenever you're doing an offensive technique, you're always thinking about, well, if I do this, then I'm going to do this. I'm just going to keep going, right? You're always going to have an attack waiting. So it's the same thing, right? Like if you're even with your escapes, you want to say it's the basic principle of jiu-jitsu. You want to keep it the same, where we want to know what's next. And so that this way, if this person is beating me here, then yeah, I need to know what's happening. So if they do this, then I need to do this. And so it's the same way that it's the same principle that we would take to literally every other position in jiu-jitsu. But again, a lot of times people don't apply it to their escapes.
Do you think that's kind of, what would you say is the most important thing with side control escapes? Like, is there one thing that you think is just, if you could take away anything, like tell someone one thing about side control escapes, what would it be?
I don't know if I could, if I don't know, maybe tell you, but
Show
if
you.
I could give you, if I could give you one attribute, one quality that would literally give you the ability to become amazing at escapes, it would be that you have to learn how to not panic. Like that's the biggie, right? Because you think about what jiu-jitsu really is, right? Jiu-jitsu is all about becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yep.
Right. Now, what do most people do when it comes to escapes? They stay as far away from them as possible, right? So like you see this all the time, where early on in jiu-jitsu, we learn how to survive, we learn how to escape. Okay. And then we start going on the offense, right? And then people will spend as much time as they can not ever going to escapes, because they don't want to be there, because it's not fun. Most people typically aren't naturally good at them. And we like the games we're good at, right?
Sure.
That's why people, like, once they, this is why like techniques find you. You start messing around with different techniques, and all of a sudden you find something, you're like, ooh, this technique's working. And then you keep using it. So with that, when it comes to escapes, one of the things you have to do is you have to become completely neutral to the position. I'm not saying you have to enjoy it, although I actually do enjoy like working on escapes now. I've gotten good enough where even against like tough people, I find it enjoyable, and there's a game to it, and there's a process to it that I find fun. Even like when I was rolling with Pixley the other day, almost the entire roll is defense.
Sure.
And so I'm like, okay, look, I'm rolling with him, I'm playing defense, and I find that part fun now. But again, it starts first with not panicking, being in control of your breath, and not being in a situation where you're in this like hyper fight or flight. You have to be very relaxed. If you can get that, then your escapes become so much easier. And you can think about this from any other position. Think about, for any of you guys listening, think about your guard, right? In the beginning, most people don't naturally take to guard, whatever. And, you open your guard and you typically don't have a lot of control. Once you're more relaxed in that position and you can open and close your guard pretty easily, you can go for an attack, you can reclose and without losing it. What happens? You feel pretty good, right? You're like, okay, like this is all right. You're not in some sort of rush or in some sort of negative position. And so that's one of the things, if you can learn how to not panic, that's number one. Because one of the biggest like worst parts about like one of the worst things that you can do in side control, I think it's the worst one, it's probably the worst mistake, is that people just start panicking. And I did it too when I was younger. I was very claustrophobic.
We all did, yeah.
Well, I was claustrophobic. I don't know about you. I was claustrophobic. In wrestling, we were taught not to be on our back. And when I was younger, I think this had something to do with it. I remember, I don't know if you guys have, there's a book that came out that was like, I forgot the name of it offhand, but it's a book about like basically overcoming trauma, and it's using jiu-jitsu as part of it. Right. Okay. And so like the psychologist that was, working on the book, she called me up and we did this interview for the book. And it's so interesting. It's like, cause I've never worked with a psychologist, and she's like, tell me, oh yeah. She's like, you have all these signs of like PTSD and stuff. Now, again, I was not a soldier. I never got blown up, nothing like that. And I'm not going to like hold that on. But like, for instance, like there's things like hypervigilance, where like, as soon as I walk into a room, I scan everything. And like, if we're in a room, I will see you before you see me.
Yeah.
It always happens. Like no one, like if I walk in a room, no one ever sees me before I see them. I always know where the doors are at, all this stuff. Yeah, right. I'm always like, my head's always on a swivel. And she's like, oh, this is because of that. She was talking about when I got jumped. But then it makes you think about, well, that's that. So then it made me think about other things. And so when I was younger, I had some sexual abuse when I was younger. And I remember when I got into rolling and even in wrestling, just being held down, effing hated it, bro.
Sure.
I was like, wow. And I remember that was one of the biggest hurdles for my escapes, was just being able to relax in the position with someone basically pinning me on top, where it felt like I couldn't breathe, but I could breathe, but I had to relax. And it really took a while, but that was a big hang up for a bit.
That's something difficult for people to get used to. Like I was telling you, my wife, she started jiu-jitsu. She's been kind of doing that off and on. That was something that she told me she had a hard time with as well. Just like feeling like you're getting held down. And like, the thing is, like, you start twitching and moving around as hard as you can. You're like, I can't budge it. And then you panic, and then maybe you tap, right? And you're like, oh shit. So I think like, just being able to get comfortable, and, you know, obviously it's very, you know, saying that everyone says, get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I think some of that's being in the position, knowing that like, hey, and if I tap, it's going to be over. Like, you know, there's a way out, obviously. So I think that's something to be said. And just things okay, so you can't move. What can you do? Think about what you can do. All right, I can breathe. I can have my hands in a certain position. I can just relax. I can just stay here. I know either time's going to run out or they might move to a different position. But if I'm relaxed, then I think that I can withstand that position.
And that's a mental thing that we know, because we know it mentally, but then it's something that you have to train physically, you know, because again, think about that, like the trauma is physical, but then it affects the mental. So I, you know, in my mind, right, like, and I don't know about you, sometimes if I want to get out of a bad mood or if I'm in a funk, what do? I don't think about it. I don't like talk about it. I'm like, I need to go do something. And when I do something, I feel better. You know, it's like, so to me, a lot of times it's the doing that we need to do. So in those situations with like the panic mode, one of the most important things you have to do is you have to train yourself out of it. You can't just you can't think your way through it. You have to actually train through, you have to train out of that position, out of that, because when you train through that and you train with it and you learn how to deal with it through the physical training, then the mind catches up, right? It's like a lot of times, even with their confidence, you know, you can try to like will yourself to be confident, you know, like I am, you can do all kinds of affirmations, whatever else. But you know what you can also do? You can go out and do something and like prove to yourself that you're good enough to do the things that you did. Like we talked to Pixley on the podcast, right? And he was talking about that one match that you guys can listen to next week. It'll be on the podcast. But when he was talking about that one particular match where in his wrestling career, all of a sudden it flipped his confidence, because he went from being like, I think I'm this guy, to I know I'm this guy. You know what I mean? And so you have to do something. And so you have to prove to yourself through the physical training that, no, I can deal with this. I can take this. And then again, most people in the beginning have that panic response. Not everybody, but most people have it. And so it's something, and again, they have it for different reasons. What's interesting though, and I've seen this, is that sometimes you see higher belts with a panic response, because, you know, a lot of times you see the higher belt, like, you know, a lot of people worry about this. They worry about their coaches maybe looking at them and being, oh man, they don't look so good, whatever. I got a question about that. That'll be a podcast soon, is because people worry about their coaches seeing them maybe get beat like one time by a person, maybe whatever. So you see a lot of upper belts who struggle when they get out positioned by a lower belt or someone that they should technically, air quotes, beat. And they can panic and get in those situations, and they can make the same mistakes that they did back when they were a white belt and blue belt.
Yeah,
you know,
there's a pressure there. Like, I shouldn't be in the situation. Why am I here? And now it's like, I've been there, and you're like, well, am I a black belt? Am I, you know, the belt that I'm supposed to be at? Like, if I'm getting beat, I'm getting subbed, really submitted by someone, and that's happened to me, and I struggle with that. And like, it's in my head, and I swirl it in my head over and over. But what you got to do, you got to do something, get out of it, and that's, you know, that usually helps. But yeah, building confidence and telling yourself, you know, is one thing, but doing it and then creating that skill and that confidence, I think, is super important.
It is.
I mean, I just think there's kind of like you're exposing yourself to their fears, and then those fears become less and less kind of, you know, you can't, like, you can handle them. Like, I mean, you can manage those fears, and they're not really that crazy. It's like jumping off of a cliff or something, that, like, into the water, maybe a high dive or something. Oh God, this is terrifying. But you do it enough times, it's nothing. You know, so.
Oh yeah. I remember, did you ever do the high dive when you were a kid?
Where I did one. I wasn't a kid though. I was always terrified of heights though, man.
I mean, I was terrified
always terrified of heights.
But I remember I saw it. I was at the pool, and I remember I was probably maybe like 10, something like that. I was young. And I remember, you know, climbing up, and that high dive felt like it was like,
dude, climbing up is the worst.
Bro.
You're like,
you know, and then, you know,
Slow-mo.
there's a line behind me, you know, so I get up there and I remember getting up there to the top and I'm standing in my head. I'm thinking, oh man, I'm
You just
really
gotta
high.
go.
Well, and then I get to the edge, you know, and I'm sitting there looking down and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. And then there's a line behind me and some guy's like, come on, kid, let's go. And then I jump off and then it was fine. And then I was up and down over and over again.
I don't allow myself in those situations. I don't allow myself to stand there. I just go. Like, I know as soon as I get up there, I don't wait. When my wife and I went, like, before we got engaged, we went to like this zip lining course. And there's a spot where actually you jump off and it just descends you down.
Okay.
But it's like straight down.
Yeah.
And so this woman in front of me was like freaking out for like 10 minutes. And I was like, they're like, you ready to go? Like, we're gonna catch you down. So no, I'm just going.
Yeah.
As soon as they clicked me in, I just walked off.
Yeah.
I just knew I couldn't wait. So like, I just gotta go for it.
Yeah.
I'll talk myself out of it.
Well, and so it's very similar with your escapes or any uncomfortable position in jiu-jitsu, right? Like you just have to go do it. You have to just jump into it. You can't think about it. You just have to go do it, right? And even what I think is interesting is like the same lessons that you learn kind of as a white belt, they pop back up as a black belt. You know what I mean? Because again, you know, like when you come in as a white belt, you have to, we'll say, leave the ego at the door.
Yeah.
You know, basically you have to shelf your feeling of that you're so good at something or whatever, and you have to start at the bottom. Well, that happens again and again when you go into the gym where, let's say, if you're just off for a day, you know, and maybe someone gets the better of you, or maybe even, you know, some guy comes in off the street, you know, or not off the street, but maybe from another gym who, you know, maybe they're just really good for their whatever. You just never know. But there's going to be moments as you work up the ranks and as you work up experience where you question yourself, like, man, what's wrong with me? It's going to smash me, whatever. Yeah. You know, and that's something. And then you get older. That's another thing. If you're a grappler, if you've gone through like your 20s on the mats and 30s and 40s, you start getting closer to 40. You're like, dang, like what's wrong with me sometimes? Like you don't feel like you did.
It used to be a lot easier.
I mean, I just think about my pace. Like my pace was different, but it's okay because it's like it's a beautiful thing and a weird thing. Because you think about most people in society do not have a read onto the physical person that they're becoming because they have no feedback, right? Because it's like you have to go do something to have feedback. If you sit at home all day long and you don't do anything physical, you never do sports, athletics, you never do what we do, right? You don't really know what's happening to your body. This is where you'll see guys who, you know, they haven't done anything exercise wise, maybe 20 years, you know, and then they come in, they're like, oh my God, like, you know, what's wrong with me? Like, it's fine, bro. We have some work to do. It's okay. But you see the same lessons over and over again.
All right, Chew. I'm going to ask you one more thing, which is something you've taught a lot.
Okay.
And a lot of people may not know. It sounds funny. It's a funny position or a funny, it's the iron squirrel. What is, we'll end with this. There's something else you want to share about side control, but was that squirrel?
I don't know what it was. Just a noise.
That was weird.
Yeah.
So what is the iron squirrel? I'm sure the people want to know.
The people. So the people. Are you doing the Bane? People.
Yep.
So the iron squirrel. So the iron squirrel was a position. I that is not my name. My buddy Jason, who I talked about side control escapes, he was the one that he dubbed it that. And so the idea with the iron squirrel is basically when your guard passing retention and it all just goes to shit. Basically, like when you know you're losing it, you go to the iron squirrel.
This is your backup plan. This is the ace in the hole.
What's really interesting about this is when I visit gyms, and I roll with people, I almost always, this is my first move. I'll basically allow them to pass, and I don't tell them, you know, well, if you guys roll with me now, you kind of know what's up. But a lot of times I let people pass me to side control, and then I start working that. And what's interesting is if you get good at it, it takes practice, of course, but if you get good at it, the person will literally be sitting on top and side control, and they can't actually get side control. Like, you know, they can't get the underhook, they can't get the crossface, they can't actually keep you flat either. Because if you think about that too, side control is essentially it's like a pin from wrestling. You know what I mean? Like we had like half Nelsons and stuff like that to where you would pin someone in essentially a side control position. And so what are we trying to do with side control? We're trying to get the person flat on their back if we're on top. Well, if we're on the bottom, if we're able to stay up on our side, then we have the ability to escape. We have the ability to move. We're in a good position. And so that's a big problem. So the iron squirrel, we called it that because it was like, once you got good at it, it was like you were the position sort of, you kind of look like a little like squirrel statue.
Use your hand.
Yeah, you're using your hand right there. So you got the little squirrel statue. But at the same time, what happens is that you end up blocking everything and you're able to really stay on your side, which again opens up escapes. And like one of the drills I'll do in the gym sometimes when we work on that stuff is I'll say, okay, bottom person being in the iron squirrel, top person, try to flatten them out and get them flat on their back with whatever you can. And what's interesting is that the person on the bottom usually either has they can either stay up the whole entire like 1 to 1.5 minute round, right? Or they're able to actually stay up further on their side for a fair bit longer. And the cool part about that is if you understand that you can stay up on your side for longer, then you understand, well, I have, a minute to work, opposed to thinking, oh man, I'm getting flattened out. Oh God, then you go into panic mode, right? So it's a really cool position.
Like that iron squirrel thing is like when we were just get into that position and then we just try to let the other person kind of, flatten you out. And it's really hard. It's like actually such a useful tool. And it's like, you can kind of hit it and it keeps you on your side. And it's kind of the same rules apply. You never want to be really, unless you're in closed guard, you don't really want to be in flat, like on your back, especially not somebody controlling your chest and your shoulders and stuff. So, Chew, we'll do, let's see, we might do a few questions here and there. You want to start with some questions, or you got anything else you want to chat about side control stuff?
That's it. I had to fix something.
All right. So we wanted to share a little something.
Yeah. So for you guys that have been, if you're on my email list, that you already know this, I'm releasing a side control escape, and that's kind of why we were talking about it.
So people get to learn the iron squirrel from you.
So if you guys are interested in getting it, you can use the link below that we'll have popping up. It's jujitsu.io/escape. We're going to do some Q&A first, but basically the escape series will go into side control escapes. There's also some really cool bonuses. So I'm going to do an early release.
Okay.
That'll be available for the first 100 people that sign up, or up until July 7th, whichever comes first.
Okay.
And essentially what it is, they'll get the side control escape series. You'll also get some rolling breakdown narrated rolls. You also get like a little bonus chats with Chew, which is fun if you enjoy my rambles. But one of the things that's going to be important about it that I think could be really useful is I'm going to do group coaching for about 2 months after the series is released.
For people in the...
Yeah. So the people, for the first 100 members, essentially what's going to happen is I release courses, right? My hope would be that I could use this as a chance to actually help you get a little bit of focus. Now, the group coaching will be, obviously, I'll be focused on escapes. That said, if you want to use it for something else, you're welcome to do so. And so essentially you get all of that sort of included. You can look at the link. When you go to the link, you'll see all the details on it. But again, I think it's going to be super cool. It'll help you out with your side control escapes. And then we'll be working with each other for about 2 months to try to either implement that stuff, or if there's something else you want to implement in your game, then you can use it for that. But I think that'll probably be the most helpful part, because you'll have essentially me for 2 months to help you implement stuff.
Yeah. So jujitsu.io/escape.
That's it.
Cool. So if you want to do some giveaways?
Let's do some giveaways.
So if we do, we get your question answered, or if we pick your question, we will. So throw some questions in the comments. If we get your question, I'll just have you guys email thejujitsupodcast@gmail.com, and we'll know what you want. I guess send us your name and whatever else, email and all that fun stuff. So Chewy, there was actually one that I saw that I kind of thought was a good one.
All right.
We'll see. You can look through yours too.
Someone said my arms were looking good. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah. Chewy came in here flexing. You want to do this one?
Wasn't flexing.
Batman Wayne.
Flex. Yeah.
There you go. Flex on some people.
There we go.
All right, let's do Batman Wayne.
The lighting. I'm angled. Yeah. Okay. Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. Batman Wayne.
All right.
It says, is it better to look for escapes like shrimping, ghost escapes, backside, etc., or is it better to go for inversions, or wait for movement and use the scramble to get out?
Cool. Batman Wayne.
Batman Wayne. Send us the message.
Send us a message. We'll send you a gift. Might be a t-shirt, might be a course, might be a few other things.
Cool.
With it, is it better to escape like shrimping? So it depends on the situation. It also depends on your style, right? So for instance, I don't really like inverting that much. Not from a defensive standpoint with escapes. I'll do it every now and then. It's not my main thing to go for. I don't like being crunched up on my neck. Just the way it is. I will invert when I have an offense going with like a leg attack, because I don't have the person flattening me out, right? Whereas if the person's coming in for a pass and I try to invert, sometimes I get crunched up. Just not my thing at 40 years old. Again, keep in mind that I'm training mostly for longevity. And granted, I do very well in competition and all that stuff when I compete, but my focus is being able to train 20 years from now. And again, when you fold up on your neck all the time, there's certain issues with that.
It
I know.
can happen,
I
yeah.
know that people say, "Oh, inverting's not that bad." I get it. I'm also 200 something pounds, and it's a little different. Anyway, with that said, again, it depends. So again, I prefer going for things like shrimping, and also I'm looking for underhook escapes. Underhook escapes are probably one of my best ones to go out the back door, but you can use shrimps as well. The ghost escape's also good. As far as the movements and scrambling to get out, here's a detail. If you are in the bottom of side control, okay, if you feel someone squeezing you, you'll notice this a lot. And a really great example of this is if you get someone that's newer, they a lot of times when they get to side control, they will start to squeeze and you will feel their arms shaking almost from the squeeze that they're putting on. Okay. When they do that, when you feel that kind of squeeze, you need to relax. There are certain exceptions to that rule, but generally you just need to relax, because if you try to push out of this, then you're just going to be pushing against them while they're giving you full strength. And again, physics aren't on your side when you're being pinned in side control. So you want to wait. And then as they begin to move, because think about it this way, in order to set up a submission, to go on the offensive, people have to move. And when people move, it creates vulnerability, right? So again, a static position is great for holding, but when you're trying to actually submit someone, you typically have to move a bit. And it's in those subtle movements. And when you start to read those with the body, you start to feel for those. That's when you make your move to escape. So in some of those positions, you have to relax. And you could say creating a scramble, but in a lot of cases, if you know how to do it, you're really creating a controlled situation. It might look scrambly to other people, but it's really not scrambly. In one of the rolling breakdowns that I do in that series that I'm sharing with you guys, I actually show how to basically I do an off balancing with my hips. And then as their hand posts, I go for one thing, they stop that and I go for another thing. Now to the person, it might look very scrambly, but to me, it's like, I know I just went from an if this, then that approach, just like I would from going from a triangle choke to an arm bar to a something or other. So hopefully that gives you an idea.
All right, here's another one, Chew. You ready?
All right.
It's from Not Nate. Not Nate.
Not Nate.
John Travolta picture.
Whoa.
All right. Ever realize something new while explaining a technique to a lower belt?
That John Travolta picture, man. That's
hilarious. Yeah.
Cool. Ever realize something new while explaining a technique to all the time? All the time. I think, Eugene, I think you'd agree with this, because I think this is one of the things that everyone that teaches realizes. This is actually, if you guys didn't know, this is why I started wanting to teach classes. I remember listening. There used to be a podcast called, what was it? On the Mat.
I think so. Is there? I don't know.
Something. I can't remember. It was like the very first Jiu-Jitsu podcast back then. It was like 2007. And I remember I used to listen to it. And one of the guys was talking to, it may have been Lovato or maybe someone else, but they were saying man, when you teach Jiu-Jitsu, you get better at it.
100%.
You understand it on such a deeper level, right? And one of the things that happens for that is because you're having to digest information on a far deeper way, and then basically simplify it enough that other people can learn it, right? This is why, for instance, if you watch online stuff, this is sort of a quick side tangent, is that if someone's coming at you with a ton of word salad, where they're just using big words and they can't break it down to very simple meanings and simple ideas, I typically don't think they probably know what they're talking about. They're probably just trying to impress you with their vocabulary, right? To look at my lexicon. You can use big words, but what's the point, right? If you can simplify it, it's much better, because then anybody can learn it, right? And it really shows that you know how to explain it because you know it very deeply. Now, that said, when it comes to the lower belts, what a lot of times happens is I will teach a technique or I will explain something. And because of where they are at, they'll have certain questions or certain ideas that I didn't think about, because we're in two different places. We're essentially on the same road, but we're in two different locations on that road, right? So again, they're going to see different things than I'm going to see. And so what happens a lot of times is they'll ask questions. And then it makes me go, I don't know, right? Maybe I'm going to research that. Or they'll ask a question, and out of that question, it draws a better explanation from me, because it makes me think about the why or how this works and stuff like that. And there's a lot of times I realize all kinds of cool stuff. And I wouldn't say necessarily that I realize stuff that I didn't know. It's like from the teaching, they draw out the ideas that are in me, but then it makes me realize what's going on. Because you start to look at they're like, why am I doing this? Oh, well, because of this. And maybe you never thought about it, right? Because a lot of times in jiu-jitsu, when you focus just on the executing things, you might do a lot of things and you don't even really give it too much thought. You're just like, I just
Right.
do this thing. When you're explaining it though, you have to go much deeper than that.
No,
So
I agree. I think it's you figure out the why, like why am I putting my hand here? What's the purpose? Or and a
and
lot
they're
of
going to ask those
times
questions
you
because
will.
they're going to ask those questions because they're newer and
Exactly.
they want
They're
to
going to
know.
ask something that you didn't think about. It's going to help you better understand the position and better able to explain it and
Yeah.
teach it. And you're gonna know by having answers to all these different questions, different ways of thinking about a position or a technique. You're gonna actually have just a more well-rounded understanding of it.
Yeah, like teaching and answering questions from other people like that are trying to learn, it helps you refine your jujitsu. I mean, big time. It's like it's why anybody that wants to get good at jujitsu, I encourage you to like start like teaching. I mean, I started teaching originally. I wanted to do it for free because I was like, I just want to improve my jujitsu. It's very selfish. And then later on, it was like,
Mhm.
okay, I actually like coaching because it makes me feel like good to see people improve.
So this is from Mixed Perfection. Should we go ahead?
Mixed Perfection is you've been with us many times.
Yes, I know the
Been with us
name.
many times. So,
Yep.
what side control escapes do y'all, it's a Kentucky thing, find chained together well based on common reactions? Lots of different ones. One of my favorites, so probably my most like shat on escape, if you want to say it that way, is my shoulder roll. Like, the push when we go over top.
Yeah.
Like if anytime that thing gets posted or shared, I mean, so many, even lots of higher belts too. They're like, this won't work. This is shit, whatever. And I'm like, it does work. Like I originally like picked it up watching a multiples like 7-time world champion do it. I was like,
Yeah.
worked for him, works
Yep.
for me, right? Well, I've used it over the years, and one of the things that I found is it's so effective for getting people's hands like on the mat, which then opens up underhook escapes and it opens up a lot of frames. And then it also led me to using my hips and my legs to do this little leg swing to get people off balance. And so the shoulder roll, which I it's on the YouTube channel and I teach it and everything else in the series that's coming up. That's one of the ones I use. Now, really though, any of the escapes work because it's all based on the same things, right? Like most escapes are based upon you getting your arms where they need to be, whether you're going to frame up or underhook escape or whatever. It's all really kind of comes back to your hands being in a good defensive position. But the shoulder roll to the underhook is one of my favorites.
Mhm.
It's one of the ones I use all the time. And if we ever roll with each other, I guarantee I'll probably try to use it on you. And I think I have a pretty good success rate on it, but who knows? Maybe you'll pin me.
Chewy, this is a question for the product. They were asking, how will they know if they're one of the first 100 people? Is there a way they'll know?
Yes, you will know because I will be basically closing everything off right now. I mean, it's released, so I imagine it'll make it at least a couple days. I don't know. Sometimes these things go faster than I expect. I remember the first time we sold geese. I was like, hey, we're going to sell I remember it was my first gi sale. I was like, we're only going to sell 100 of these. And it was like 2 days later, I was like, oh, snaps. That didn't last long at all. All right. Yeah. Whatever. Great. But, sometimes it surprises me. I don't realize the reach of the interwebs. Anyway, that said, the first 100, I will be sending out a message to you guys. You'll get emails letting you know that, hey, you're inside the first 100, that you'll have access to the group coaching. Really, the big difference is the first 100, you're getting the group coaching. After the first 100, like you won't get the group coaching at the discounted rate, because right now I'm literally giving it away. To be honest with you, I did a group coaching thing back in January, and it was a lot of fun. And several people got a lot from it. I enjoyed it. We did like a little New Year coaching thing. And so I was like, this is fun. I enjoy this because, again, I actually got to people get the series. And then I'm like, hey, I get to work with you and actually help you implement this, opposed to saying, here you go, you're off on your own. It's like, I found that fun because, again, my whole thing is, can I help you get better at this stuff? And if I can, I want to do that. And that's always the focus. Cause from a pure, at the end of the day, the things that sort of make me feel good inside, the warm and fuzzies, is that I like when people use the stuff that I show.
Yeah.
It makes me feel good. Yeah. Right. So that's the reason. I mean, there's obviously, I get paid to do this stuff, right? It's my job. But at the same time, I like when I help people do things and improve it. It makes me feel really good. That said, along with that, it's a chance for me to help make that happen for other people, is to help them get better. So that was the reason for doing it that way with the coaching, is just I'm basically giving it away for the first 100 people to sign up. Afterwards, they'll have the option, but it'll be more costly. You'll have to pay more for it. So again, we did that back in January as a little test run. I enjoyed it. So we're doing the group coaching thing again, and it'll be a chance for me to help you actually implement the stuff in there. So that this way someday you'll be able to come up to me and say, man, this stuff actually worked. A lot of times people that come to my seminars or to the camps that I have, and they have the courses maybe that correspond with that stuff, a lot of times they get a lot from it. And so can't do that for everybody all the time, but this is a way to kind of make that happen, to help push the information through and help you actually get more from it.
Do you want to,
let's see, where is it?
That's where it was? You want to go ahead and, that's a good question. I mean, it's useful. Do you want this one right here?
Which one?
We just answered?
Yeah, click on it.
This one, that's the one we just answered.
Okay, yeah.
So Battle Spectre, yeah, we'll
so we'll get you updated. So you'll get some emails and everything else.
Perfect.
What's the best way to escape once you get flattened out? I don't see me setting up the escape prior. So again, you may not see yourself setting up the escape, but that's where you want to start. That said, what's the best way to escape when you get flattened out? What you really have to do when you think about getting flattened out is, one is you got to learn not to panic. That's number one, right? And then next is you have to learn, how can you get this person slightly out of position, right? So again, if you're there and the person's just like got you flattened out and they're squeezing you and you're just laying there, and then all of a sudden you try to initiate an escape, probably not going to be the best thing. I would liken it to setting up takedowns, right? You could have a really good shot, like a really good takedown, but if you shoot in with no setup, it's really tough. You have to be really, really good to get a takedown with no setup. However, if you know how to use angles and you know how to get people moving and things like that, then when you set up the takedown, you don't have to be nearly as fast. You don't have to be nearly as quick. You can set it up a lot easier. And so it's the same thing is true. And this is really true with any position. The better your setups are, the better you are at getting everything in place first, the easier it becomes. I talk about this. One of my students, he's or former students, but still a good friend. He owns a body shop. Mm-hmm. And I've told this story before, but it's a great thing to talk about anytime we talk about the subject. He was talking about the fact that when you when you're painting cars, because it does body work, right? When you're painting cars, really the most time and energy has to be spent on the setup and the prep. He's like, you could have $1 million paint, and if you do really crappy prep work, it's going to look terrible. He said, but you can give me a mid-grade paint. He's like, and I'll do really good prep work. I'll do all the sanding and priming and everything just to a T, and I can make it look like $1 million. And I think it's the same way. You have when you get flattened out, what you have to look for is, one, getting yourself into a better defensive position so you don't have to be in a panic mode, which again, I promise you can do that. You can set that up. That's possible, right? And then you have to have ways to get this person off balance so you can set up your escapes and get yourself into position. Now, is this easy? No, it's not easy, right? But again, jiu-jitsu is not easy, and that's why we respect it. When someone can do something in jiu-jitsu, and when we can do something, we respect it because it's a skill, and skills are never easy. But that said, that's what you have to do when you're getting flattened out. You have to get to a good defensive position, and you have to have ways to actually set up your takedowns before you actually go for them. And that usually involves getting the person either out of position slightly or waiting for the right opportunity to go for it once you feel them beginning to move or releasing some space.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're...
Come back to it. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, let's do it. I don't know if it's exactly they mean escape. I mean, they're probably just trying to how
do you escape from bottom close guard if the opponent is very heavy and just lays on you? So bottom, So
you're not really escaping. You're kind of how are you
close guard? Thinking of bottom close guard would make me think of mount. Bottom.
They're talking about being in close guard on the bottom.
Yeah. Okay.
So if somebody is laying on you heavy, they're just not moving, not trying to pass, just kind of like a blanket, just covering you up, kind of thing.
So first off, you have to stay super relaxed. One of the issues that will really mess you up is if you get frustrated. It happens all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is when you're dealing with jiu-jitsu, you're not just dealing with techniques and physical attributes. You're dealing with a mental side of it. I've experienced it both on the positive and the negative side of it, of when grapplers get frustrated and they start to make mistakes because they can't get anything going. And so the first thing you have to do is you have to not get into a sort of a pissed off mindset. Come on, man, do something. You just can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing that has always helped me, and again, I don't know the specific position that they're in with the closed guard, so it makes it hard to like troubleshoot, right? Like I don't know the exact thing, but if they're there, a lot of times what I start to do is start to get their head to move. You can do this, obviously, you can start to fish for collar chokes and everything else. You can even use a chin press where you get up under their chin and jack them up. But if I can get their head to move, their body's going to follow. What a lot of times people will do is they'll start pushing on the shoulders and they'll start trying to like tug on the arms. And if the guy's large, like, I mean, their arms are jacked, their neck's thick. It's hard to just push on their shoulders and everything else. But if you get up under their chin, you start lifting their head up, you can get their body to follow. And that can typically give you a little bit of space. So that's typically like, doesn't always work, but that's typically my step one. Get the head moving. If I can get their head moving, I can get them moving. You can think about like things like over-under passes, tight passes, like body locks and stuff like that. If people get me into those types of passing situations, I almost always start trying to move the head.
Yeah.
And so like same thing in like a closed guard, like, if someone's in a really low position, they're just laying there, I try to get their head up under, or get my hand up under their head and lift their chin up. And again, I can make it as uncomfortable as I can. Like if they're just laying there, I'll start digging my arm underneath of their neck here. And I'll start I'll do uncomfortable things that as soon as they get their head up, I'll let go and stop. But I'm going to make it uncomfortable and painful for you to just sit there with your face buried in my chest. And so I can start lifting up the neck and everything else and sort of getting under their face. And that typically gets them to, comply a little bit and bring their face up a bit.
I like to start digging collars and cross collar.
Well, you're a collar choke. You're a collar choke machine with your loop chokes.
I love that stuff. I'll just start messing with people. I'll just start just grabbing stuff, poking stuff, start
poking stuff.
Not poking, what I mean? But I'll just start trying to dig my hands in and try to make it uncomfortable under the neck.
No, that's right.
And just to make them react, make their arms come up, and just kind of make them do something, because sometimes they obviously they can just lay there, and people stall all the time from that position. They get comfortable being really low and they can stall. A good single leg or a drop single.
All right, let's talk about it.
What's the best way to shoot a single leg takedown?
Best way to shoot a single leg depends when you say best. There is no best, right? But for jiu-jitsu, there's a really good way that I really like to do it. And it's probably one of the most effective, one of the most higher percentage single legs you'll see used in jiu-jitsu, right? So there's certain like takedowns in wrestling that you won't use in jiu-jitsu because of the fact that it exposes your neck in certain ways, or because when you land in a kind of a bad position. It's the same thing with judo. There's a lot of judo takedowns that you would never use in jiu-jitsu because you would literally be giving up your back, even when you land, because the rules are different, right? So with that, the best takedown that I have for a single leg is typically a sweep single. It's what it's typically called in wrestling, a sweep single. It's so effective in gi. It's so effective in no gi because you can change the grips up, whatever. I've got that one. It's on my channel if you want to look it up. If you guys have my Wrestling for Jiu-Jitsu series, I go into it in deeper depth there as well. But it's both free and paid, so you can get it wherever you want on my YouTube channel or on my website. But I like that takedown for a couple reasons. Number one, again, because it's versatile for the gi and the no gi. I don't have to change much. The grips almost stay the same for gi and no gi. Another thing that's really nice about it is that it puts you off at an angle. So a lot of jiu-jitsu people that wrestle, right, that have they wrestled a little bit, they don't actually know how to wrestle in any other direction than forward and backwards. That's all they do. They go forward, backwards. They don't know how to set up angles. And a lot of times they don't know how to defend shots that come at angles. And so the sweep single is super effective. It protects your neck. You're not going to get caught in a guillotine from it unless that person is really, really good at countering that specific takedown, which most people are not. I've never been caught in a guillotine from that one. And then you're also at that angle. And then when you're coming up, the person can't sprawl on you. So again, one of the dangers of nervousness that we have when it comes to shooting is that we're worried about getting sprawled on, right? That's one of the things that lurk in people's heads. What if they sprawl on me? You're not going to get sprawled on with a single leg takedown with a sweep single. What they would have to do is they would have to change their angle. And so a lot of times I love that takedown for jiu-jitsu, and I love it in gi and no gi. And again, you can check it out on the YouTube channel or on one of my series that I have for wrestling and jiu-jitsu. Sweep single.
All right, guys, I'm going to tell you all a secret.
What?
I'm not the best takedown guy. I hit one of those in my tournament.
Yep.
I hit it. Yeah. I was working it. I love that takedown.
It's a good takedown.
I go for it. I just feel there's always risk with takedowns, but this one, if I don't get it, we'll pop right up. I have a good angle. So if it works for me, it's probably gonna work for a lot of people. I'm not I like to sit to guard and do that stuff and start playing lapels and playing butterfly hooks and stuff like that. So I think that one's a really great one. So
it's effective. And I have some friends that are like world champs, and it's like their go-to gi or no gi. And so I always tell people to like check it out. And
yeah,
I've also got like in several of my competition videos, you can see me using it
all the time. You hit it. Yeah.
I mean, it was always my go-to because like, and this is the thing when you're setting up takedowns, like I like to have takedowns that attack both sides.
Yeah.
So basically I got to sweep single. I can sweep single both sides, but I got to sweep single. If they go other foot, then I go inside trip. Like I can attack both sides. So this way, if the person defends one, I go to the other.
Yeah. All right, Chew. Let's see. We got a few more. What are we giving away? Some. I'm going to give away a couple courses and
so
stuff.
I'm giving. So as far as what we're giving away,
yeah, let's do that
we'll be giving away courses. So like some video courses. I'll give away some different stuff, including one. I'll be giving away one course, one of the side control skip courses with all the bonuses, and then we'll also be doing a. I'll be giving away a couple T-shirts too.
Cool.
Like send out some T-shirts from time to time.
Sweet.
So
yeah, I'll give away some stuff. Somebody has a little injury or something like that, and you want something on like shoulders or hips or back, stuff like that. Let me know. All right. So there's actually one good one, and this is. Okay. I want to ask this one. So JJC, how do you improve your cardio? I guess after my first roll, there's probably a lot to unpack there.
Well, let me ask you this, JJC. We'll get into some ideas, but real quick, bro. Here's what I want to ask you: how long have you been training? How old are you? And what's your diet like? And are you in decent shape to begin with? So again, how old are you? How long have you been training? What's your diet like? Are you in decent shape to begin with? At least give me, that may be too many for you, but give me at least 3 of those, because those are important, right? Cardio is one of those things where there's lots of different ways to tackle that situation. And if we're talking about cardio needed for a competition versus cardio inside just a gym, if you're a club guy, like a casual guy, different situations again. First off, if you're new, then you just have to put rounds in, because one of the things that happens is early on, if you're new, is that you're just going to be inefficient. Everything's new to you. Your body's in panic mode constantly. It's just a mess. It just is what it is. Like it exhausts everyone. This is why you can have a person who's in relatively good shape come into the gym and then they roll for like, a minute and they're exhausted. Right. So that happens all the time. So again, understand that there is no way to basically improve your cardio for jiu-jitsu without rolling, because it's not just the roll, it's not just the physical, the heart pumping and the cardiovascular system itself. You're also talking about efficiency of movements. This is why you can get black belts. Like sometimes you'll see black belts and they're really out of shape.
Yeah.
Like they're just like kind of chubby and like fat. Right. But like, then you see them move and like, they just are so damn efficient. Like they have such a good economy for movement. They know when to do things, when not to do things. So they don't even have to be in that good of shape in order to get the job done. Right now, if you get really good and you're efficient and you're in good shape, then that's even better. So there's that. You just have to start rolling. That's number one. Okay. I mean, sure, that's never it's not new to you. And then you have to tackle, and this is my thing. If your rolling's happening and you're rolling and you're getting better, then that's great. Then I think you have to talk about like diet, nutrition. It's the thing that no jiu-jitsu guy wants to talk about, like, because I don't know why, but it's like one of the biggest pieces that if you get that into place, it's like game changing. Okay, so let's hear. Dad of 3 little kids, you lucky bastard. 2 times a week. Okay, cool. Gotcha.
10, 190.
All right, so we're working. All right, so, and I don't know how long you've been training, but I'm assuming not too long. All right, so you get to train twice a week. Got 3 little kids. All right, cool. That gives me a little bit more to work on. So you're going to roll. You're going to do your thing. You got 3 kids. You're going to do your best to get your diet in check. I know it's not going to be easy because kids probably going to eat whatever kids are going to eat. And you're going to, I call it the dad tax. Like you're giving them something and you're like, well, I'm just going to have one. Like, or sometimes they don't eat everything. So you're like, I'm just going to eat this too. The dad tax. You got the dad tax?
Dude, I have, it's so hard for me to like see food go to waste. It's just like,
I'm the same way. Yeah.
Like, but man, I really have like limited how much I like a snack and stuff like that. I've just gotten so much more disciplined about it. And I feel like tons better. Now, cardio's better and all that stuff.
Now, so people have already heard me go on this rant about nutrition. You went on the diet.
Yep.
Right. How did you feel as far as your energy and levels?
I felt good. I was getting up earlier, like to do my like cardio, like I did some steady state cardio, which some we can talk about, something I would add as well. I felt good. I felt like I was less tired. I didn't like, sometimes, you're like, man, I'm dragging butt. I need some coffee. I didn't really need, like, I like coffee. I like, gives me a little boost, but I didn't need it. I just felt good. I didn't feel sluggish. I felt like I was just more sharp.
Nice.
And my body felt better.
Cool.
Like I felt better, and I felt like I looked a little better. And I was like, I actually started
You
putting on
looked
some
good
muscle.
last year. Like when you were down at that low cut weight.
Yeah.
Well, you had all the striations in your chest. You're looking good, man.
I'm trying to get lean again, a little more lean, but man, I've done it for about a year, and I probably never go back to like, I just already know what I'm going to eat, when I'm going to eat it, how much I'm going to eat. I feel good. And it's less data I got to like compute. Like my brain can do other stuff.
I
like
eat the same stuff. So
that's diet's huge. Yeah.
So that's one of the big things. Even like my my big like student Brandon, he's getting ready for getting ready for some tournaments, getting ready for a camp. He's working with my nutrition coach right now, and he's already saying the same thing. Man, I feel great. Yeah, right. So again, it's one of those things where nutrition's a huge part of it. My encouragement, again, is to get a coach for that, because it makes it so much easier, just like you do for everything else, like to teach you. Now, that said, now we get into like, here's some extra stuff that you can do cardio wise. I'm a big fan of like, unless you are trying to get ready for a big tournament, that I'll talk about that second. If we're just saying getting decent shape, I like steady state. Some sort of steady state cardio, right? You can do a bike, you can do stair stepper, you can go outside and run, whatever you want to do. That's my go-to, because like it's relatively easy. It's also a little bit different than what we're doing, where your cardiovascular system is getting taxed in different ways. Like when you're training really hard, like if you've ever worn a heart rate monitor, if you're in your gym rolling, your heart rate's typically going to start it's going to start like going to the top end of your max heart rate. If you're really going at a decent clip. For me, like, if I'm in a really good, like battle with one of the other brown or black belts, I'm typically sitting at like getting into the 160s, 170s. Yeah. So I'm getting up there, sometimes even higher. Right. And then when you're getting in a steady state, you can keep it a little bit lower, and you can keep a nice steady rhythm going. And that has some benefits for your cardiovascular system that is essentially in jiu-jitsu, we just don't hit it the same way, because we're constantly in jiu-jitsu where it's all these intervals. Right now, when it comes to getting ready for a competition, I'll do a lot more interval work. In addition to that, which again, you got a dad of 3, you're probably not worried about that, but I'm just telling people, I'll do the interval work in addition to my steady state, because I need that extra gas tank, and I need to take my heart rate up as high, like basically to get it up really high and get my body like basically neurologically like comfortable with that. Because like if you're not used to having your heart rate super high, like at that and holding that for a while, like, and that's basically when you're competing, you're sitting in the red line for a lot of the round. Like it can be incredibly taxing on your system. Not just like physically, like huffing and puffing, but like afterwards where your body's just like shot. So you have to be used to that. So I'll do interval work on the bike. For the knees, because it saves my knees. But otherwise, steady state, I think, is a great addition. Add that in a couple times a week. Like Eugene's saying, if I do it, I do first thing in the morning when I get up. Out my property, I've got some land. You do
some fasted. Yeah. You do fasted sometimes?
I do it fasted, but really, I don't care if it's fasted or not. I really just do it because it's like, I wake up typically around 6:30. And like Luca gets up around like usually around 8:30. So I was like, I got to get it in.
Got some time.
I got some time. I go outside on the property and start running, or I'll jump down on the bike or the treadmill in the basement. But it's nice outside. I like being out in the property.
I think my steady state, I actually like to run. Some people, as a physical therapist, I watch like a lot of jiu-jitsu. We'll do some warm-ups and run around the mats, and jiu-jitsu people are terrible runners. Their mechanics are horrible.
I don't think
hips don't extend.
People. I think it's regular. I think it's a lot of people who just sit and everything else.
Running is a skill, and if you're not a good runner or hurts your knees, there's obviously other options. But I agree with the one of the things I really liked. I feel like I'm a decent runner.
Yeah.
And I liked that manual treadmill to do my like intervals.
Yeah. Okay.
To do intervals. I hate doing intervals on the bike. It's hard as shit.
Oh, it's great.
It's hard.
It's awful.
But I also hate doing it on those manual treadmills. So if you get those things suck. And so I did that before my tournament. My last tournament, I would just go in and I would like do interval work a couple days a week, just really tax myself. And it was I was so tired after that. And I think that just I think it's physically good, but it's also mentally good, because I think you're learning to like get uncomfortable and just stay with the uncomfortableness. Like, I got 10 more seconds, I can push through.
Cardio is also like,
I hate cardio.
I
hate it. Hate it.
So one of my buddies, he used to like run marathons, and he told me, he's like, he was at this point, he was like focused on jiu-jitsu only. He's black belt. He's like, Chew, I don't run marathons anymore. I'm like, why? And at the time we were heading up to a competition to go compete, and he points. and you could see people, they have their like little numbers and stuff. They were running some marathon. He's like, look at all those people. Tell me one of them that looks like they're happy. And you look at all of them and they all look miserable, right?
Yeah.
Like cardio, like it's uncomfortable. It's a different type of suck, especially when you're pushing yourself. And so there's definitely a mental, like mental strength to that. So like when you start getting yourself, especially when you're doing like some like intervals or you're pushing yourself with the cardio, because it's just you and you're like, why am I doing this? And you have to drum up the focus and the resilience to do it. It's like, it lends itself to being very useful when you're in the bottom of some big ass dude who's trying to put the smash on you, and you got to be like, I got to keep fighting, you know? So yeah, I think those are some helpful tips to you, bro. And again, you know, do what you can, but another thing, you know, being a father of 3, I'm sure your time is like strapped. You know, that's like one of the things, like I talked about this recently, like being like having like being like a family guy, like wife, kid versus like athlete's so much easier. Oh my God. Being like, cause I've lived the life of like the athlete that just trained all day, done it before.
You're selfish as an athlete and you're supposed to be.
It's not even that. It's not hard. It's hard physically, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you're pushing yourself, whatever else, but it feels good. Like, I mean,
you have one purpose.
You have one purpose. It's singular.
Yeah.
Whereas like when you, let's say if you have work, you have a wife or a husband, you know, if you're a mother and you have kids, everything's pulling at you. Right. Like, and like you're having to fight just to carve out a little bit of time to yourself. It's difficult. That's a way tougher existence than like just being a pure fighter, in my opinion. Right. And again, it's different. It's like a different type of tough. But for me, like I've always enjoyed training. So like training was easy. I was like, I mean, it was fun. It was fun. I don't want to say it's easy. It was difficult, but like, I don't like shy away from difficulty. You know, I like it, right? Because it's like usually difficulty is good. But like, you know, go and waking up, you know, whenever you need to go to train, eat some food, go train, get done, go home, take a nap, eat some food, get ready to do it again. You know, work bare minimum enough to pay for your existence. And then you just train. I mean, it was a fun life. I don't want to live it anymore, but it was fun while you had it, you know? So again, for any of you parents out there, props to you guys. It's freaking tough. And especially it's tough if you're trying to like, you know, spend some time on yourself and train. So one of the things that may help you, bro, as well is like on Sunday or whatever day you like, sort of write out a schedule for yourself and like try to have it planned out. Maybe even talk to your wife about it and like have it all planned out. So you're like, this is what I'm doing this week and here's what I'm trying to accomplish. And so they can be on board and helping you. Yeah.
And have your significant other, like maybe do the diet with you or meal prep with you, do that thing together, because I think it's so much easier. Like I don't think I could have done it by myself. My wife did it with me. We did it together. We did the dieting together. And I think it was way easier. Cause I just think it's too easy to fall off the wagon. If you're just like have all these things that like pull at you, like you can't meal prep. I mean, it's a lot of food. It's a lot. It takes time, but you get more efficient at it. But I think having somebody with you along to do it is so much more helpful.
Yeah. My wife, she did the meal prep with me. Like, so the first time I did the diet, like I did it solo, but the second time my wife did it with me. Actually I've done it several times, but my wife did it with me last year and she lost like almost like 20 something pounds, 30 pounds, whatever. And like, she didn't do anything else, but just really change the diet.
Right.
But like, even now, even though she's not on the diet necessarily, she still eats the same way. So anyway, just getting on a good diet that you can follow is really, really useful. So
this is from Mayi Bissett. What do you do when you're the smallest one in the gym and everyone just uses their weight and strength to pin you or throw you around?
You just lay there and
just take it.
Just take it. Get smashed.
No, not it.
So, you know, again, I've talked about this before. Like everyone comes into jiu-jitsu with like some inherent strengths and weaknesses, right? Some of those strengths and weaknesses don't necessarily show themselves early on. And also too, again, I don't know, the name sounds maybe like you're a woman, right? And when you're on the mat, and if you're not, just let me know, but I'm going to assume that you are. So please correct me if I'm wrong. But again, if you have some big dudes, sometimes there's just like, I mean, it's just freaking physics, right? Like we have a woman named Karen. Like Karen is
she's tough as hell,
super tough. She had like what, 105 pounds. I mean, she's tiny, you know, she's a little woman, but like, she's good. Like I like rolling with her. I roll with her like every week and we'll get she's got great leg entanglements. She's got good stuff going. But she's also like a tiny 40-year-old woman, right? I mean, just that. Also, you mentioned, does hiking up and down hills help with cardio? Hell yes, it does. That's what, like on my property, that's what I love doing, is he'll like basically hill sprints, running up hills. It's great. You basically don't go very fast and you get great cardio. Anyway, back to your question.
Matt said, yep. Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So the to your question, so like with her, I mean, there's a certain point where, like, when we're rolling, like, I can't go full speed on her, because of the sense that, like, she's older than me and she's much smaller than me. And again, there's a difference between like female and male anatomy. We all know this. Anybody that's trained for like 2 seconds, you understand this, right? Again, don't get me wrong, there's some tough women out there. You know, and there's some guys that aren't as physical as some of the ladies that I've rolled with, but at the same time, there's some issues there, some differences there. So again, with that, you would have to have good training partners. So if you have a bunch of guys that are just crushing you left and right, you know, like, again, you might even talk to them like, hey man, like, could you guys ease up off me? Like, I'm the smallest one here. Could you let me work a little bit? I mean, you know, again, like, I've had that conversation with some of the guys who are newer. Yeah, female 100. So you're like Karen, you know, and I've had this conversation with people with like, with one of my women, because I'm like, you know, like, you're like, for instance, there's a guy who's like, you're 185 pounds, you're 25 years old, she's 40 plus years old, she's 105 pounds. I'm like, just ease.
What are you trying to prove exactly?
Well,
so
the thing is like, sometimes the people just, I don't think they even think about it. It's like, just ease up, you know? And I've heard the situation where people say, well, like, I read some post. One of my email subscribers sent it to me, and it was like some black belt posted like, don't take it easy on women, you know, just, you know, don't take it easy on women, you know, roll with men, you'll get better. And, you know, basically this macho talk. It's nonsense. If let's say as an example that you're on the bench press and you throw 315 on there and you can't move the damn bar, what are you going to do? You just going to just keep the thing on there and never drop the weight? No, you're going to like scale it back a little bit, right? And so again, you can look at training in the sense that I'm going out there to smash every single person that comes in, and that's all I'm there to do. Or you can look at it from the standpoint of, I'm there to get skill, and I'm there to also help my training partners out. That's kind of where I'm at in the boat, right? Now, again, there's times where, like, if I'm going like with a really tough, like black belt, like one of, you know, different black belts that we have in the gym, sometimes we're out there to smash. Sometimes like Eugene and I'll be going and like, we'll be getting after each other, and we're there to like go after each other. It just happens. It's fine.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, if I'm going with someone and I know they don't have that in them, I'll change my approach. This is another thing I talk about in the series, where I'm like, here's a way to train with less experienced training partners. Here's a way here's a way to get more skill from your roles with people that maybe don't have the ability to just like put it on you. And so if you have a bunch of really big guys that are just constantly putting on you, you might just like sort of bring attention to, like, hey, would you mind like giving me a little space to work? It sounds like, I know it might sound bad to some, but again, the way that I'm thinking about this is like, I eventually would like you to be able to escape a 200-pound man's grip, right? That would be the goal. But if you can't do that right now, just like the 315 on the plates on the bench, we would just drop the weight a little bit. We'll just drop the intensity a little bit. We'll give you something you can work with so you can engage, and we'll work you up over time. Like Karen, when she comes in, if she rolls with a guy who's, I watched her roll with like a newer guy who's like around 150 pounds or whatever, pretty good control of him. You know, getting a man who's significantly heavier than her, now that she has more experience and she's been used to rolling with guys longer. It just takes time, you know? And so again, people have inherent strengths and weaknesses. And it's just one of those things where when you come in as a smaller person, that's going to be it's going to be a very big problem. It's going to be a very big weakness for you. Whereas big people get to come in early and they're like, I'm big, I can smash, right? Things change though, because like later on, especially small people, they can get really good at like there's certain things like chokes and different submissions where they can learn how to utilize their size to their advantage. And then big guys, like you'll see big guys a lot of times really struggling playing off their back because they don't want to do it, or they're physically, they don't like, they have a lot of size, maybe they've got a belly and they physically can't play it very well. And so they have their own weaknesses that they'll have to tackle later on. So everybody has them. You have yours. But again, if you have guys that are just like smashing you to oblivion, I would probably maybe like talk to your coach, ask him, say like, is there anything that we could do maybe to get the guys to like not smash me so hard so that you can play a little bit? Even the females, okay. So again, it doesn't change. All it is like an intensity thing. So that said, I don't know how long you've been training. What you'll find though too is that as you're in these positions longer, you'll also be able to become a little bit more comfortable in them, and you'll start to learn how to pick your spots. But again, if you have someone just smashing you left and right, you can mention it to them. You could say, hey, can you give me a little bit of space to work with? Or you can ask them, say, hey, like, what's something I could do from this position? Because sometimes in those situations, they can help you troubleshoot the situation live because they're right there with you.
All right, so there's do you want to, is this one you want to answer right there?
We'll answer this one, James. This won't be like a question one because you're just asking a quick question. So we don't
just put it in.
Yeah, put it up. Basically live in Louisville, but don't get to rolling as much as possible. Yeah, we do drop-ins. We do drop-ins if you want to just stop by and experience the gym. We also have an open mat on Sundays at 10. If you want to come in and roll, we have people from all over the city that come and roll at 10 o'clock. And if any of you guys are ever in town, if you're visiting, you're welcome to stop in. We do drop-in fees, or don't do drop-in fees for like visitors outside of town. If you're just coming in, you want to train, come train.
Dude, all the time it happens. Like, we were 6 a.m. classes, man. I have 6 a.m. classes. On Friday, this dude shows up. He's like, man, I'm passing through. And like, he's like, just come through. He's like, oh, I want to get a shirt. So come in, grab a shirt or something, and like, get you some memorabilia or whatever you want, and get you a cool Jiu-Jitsu shirt. And everybody's super cool. And it's just so crazy that people come in like the 6 a.m.s or something. They're just walking. They're like, hey, what's up? And
well, because they're like,
fun.
They're on like a trip, and they're like, they have to figure out a way where they can go train, and like either it lines up with the rest of their trip, or lines up with their flight, or it lines up with their wife.
Well, the family's like asleep. He's like, dude, the family's asleep right now.
That's what I was going to say.
Trying to get out.
You got to find a way where you're like, baby, I'm going to go train and, not piss off your spouse, right?
6 a.m.s, you got to get it in when you can.
Yeah. So I've had that happen several times where people are going to come in and train because they're like, and I've done it myself.
Sure.
Like when I was I remember on my honeymoon, I was like going to the gym at like 5 a.m. because it's like Hawaii time. So I was like waking up at 4 because of the time difference. But I'd go train at like 5 a.m. And then I got to train one day because I was like, we'll just train one day, whatever. But like I was getting up every morning to go lift, so I get my training in, so that this way when Jess was getting up, then it was like, oh, hey, like here's breakfast, and let's go do our stuff that we had planned to do.
This will be a good one. I don't think we had this will be a good one to say, because this is has to do with the course. Any recommendations or advice for implementing the new material into training, especially if you're not the one running the class? Yeah.
So this is something like I go into like some detail about this in the series, because obviously, and this is something we'll talk about like in the group coaching, obviously, if you're going to get an instructional, or if you're in the situation like that, then most of you don't have control of your training, right? And so you have to implement things in other ways, right? If you're just doing open rolling, if there's a situation where your coach is doing a lot of situational rolling, then do the situational rolling, get what you can. But that said, if you are having a situation where you are trying to just implement something during like an open rolling, what you have to do is you have to give yourself something to focus on. You have to basically like know in your head, like, what are you stepping on the mat to do today? This is something that a lot of people don't do. They get on the mat and they're just kind of like, I'm here to show up. And that's okay. Especially early on, you kind of have to be there. You're not in the driver's seat yet. But if you're like, decent white belt, blue belt and so forth and up, then you're at that point where you can you got the keys to the car. You can navigate a little bit of the grappling, right? You're on the ground, and with certain people, you can kind of control where things go. And so what I would say to you is that, again, you need to have an idea of what it is you're trying to work on. That has to be like clear in your head. Like, this is the thing I'm trying to work on. And then when you're rolling, that has to be what you go back to over and over and over again. And then likewise, when you're doing this, the best people to do it with is with people that you can beat, or people that you have more control of, or smaller people, or whatever. Any people that you can roll with that you don't feel like hyper threatened from, that's the people to go with. Because like, let's say if you're rolling with someone of the exact same skill level who maybe is slightly better than you, or right at the same skill level, you make one mistake, you pay for it, right? Whereas if you maybe, go with someone that's a little bit less experienced than you, then you get a little bit more wiggle room. You get to play a little bit more. So if you mess up, well, you can still fight out of things, or maybe you can even salvage the whole situation. And so this is something that I do. One of the rolling videos, again, I show this when I go to another gym. I show exactly what it, I have a, in the video I was showing at the time, I typically have a top game plan and a bottom game plan. And I will basically try to work those. So as an example, at the top game plan, I was working on my old man style guard passing. So I was passing the guard in a very efficient way, the way that I like to do it. And when I got to mount, which was my goal position, I let the person escape. So instead of finishing the round, I was like, I don't want to finish it because that would stop everything. So I let him escape. He gets me back to half guard, and I go right back to my passing, and I'll do it over and over again. Because again, I'm not there to win; I'm there to get skill. And so during an open roll, I'll essentially situational roll. I'll go for the same things over and over again. When I was trying to develop my side control escapes, did the same thing. It's like every roll, I'll let you get me there because I want to be there, and I need to get the reps. And so it becomes like a situational role. And so I focus on doing that. And so that's something that you can do to get a lot of skill. Again, if you're the bottom of the pecking order and there's nobody in the gym that's, you know, not as good as you or whatever, is worse than you, then you just do what you can and you wait till it happens, because it's going to happen at some point. New people come, your skill gets better, that kind of thing. But once you have people in the gym that are not as good as you, resist the urge to like use it as like an ego boost to just like smash them and be like, look how cool I am, whatever, in your head, and use it as a chance to say, okay, I'm going to work on stuff with them. So when you go with the higher belts or the people that are the same skill level, you use whatever your A game is. People that are less experienced than you use the stuff that you're not so good with so that you can develop them. You can use the things that the new submissions you want to work on, the new sweeps, the new escapes, whatever it might be. You use that stuff over and over again. And then here's the thing, okay? Here's what you got to do next. You have to do it for months. Now, again, you don't have to roll like that every single day, but like you'd at least want to do it like once or twice a week, at least, right? To keep it fresh. And again, this is a really powerful thing. It's so simple. Most people aren't going to do it, right? Because it requires too much focus, and focus is uncomfortable. But focus on it for like months. I've spent literally months, 6 months to a year, focusing on a particular type of position or technique, not every single day, but like a couple times a week, trying to just dial into that position, that technique. And it works. It just works. You start to get there over and over again. And you start to you basically get the muscle memory that we're all looking for, right? Now, here's the other thing to think about. In jiu-jitsu, you're probably only going to master a handful of techniques at best if you stick with it for a long time, right? So understand that, you know, you want to be smart with the things that you decide to take on. But when you find something you like, you should feel comfortable diving onto that position for years. And you don't have to feel like bad about it. Like, well, what if I'm missing out on all this other cool stuff? You may not use all that stuff anyway, because you look at so many grapplers, right? Like their games are very narrowly defined, but they don't need everything. You don't need everything. Again, techniques are great, but like for instance, if you get my side control series, you may only get one useful thing from it, and to me, that would be a win. Because I've downloaded, or not downloaded, but I've bought like instructionals, went to seminars, and my whole thing is, can I get one thing out of it? If I can get one thing, I agree. One thing can change your game. Like I've one half guard entry and one sweep became my half guard game, which led to like a dozen other techniques, right? One video over here taught me this one thing, and this grip changed everything. And then all of a sudden it was going down the rabbit hole with this. One thing can steer you in a completely different direction. It's like, think about your life. One person can radically change the trajectory of your life, right? One technique, one position, one thing can just send you in a different direction completely. So that is the long ramble as to how you can implement techniques without being in control of your training. It's a really good strategy. If you break that down, do that, it'll work. It has to. If you pick a good technique and you focus on it for months and years down or through rolling, like, it's going to work. Just it has to, because you're forcing it to work, right? Now, if you're like 5'2" and you got little short stubby legs and you're trying to triangle 250-pound monsters, just bad matchup, right?
Might not be the right.
Yeah, may not be the right choice. But assuming that you're picking something that can work for you, you're going to be in good shape.
Cool. All right. Well, Chewy.
So guys, thank you guys for being here. Hopefully you guys got a few ideas to chew on from the podcast. Again, I was releasing this series to you, the Side Control Escape series, which you can get at jujitsu.io, www.jujitsu.io/escape. I might change the URL later to my jujitsu.net. URL. But again, I'm releasing that, but at the same time, I wanted you guys to get something from it. So hopefully you guys got a few ideas to chew on from this podcast that you can implement into your training, and appreciate you guys for being here.
All right. Well,
Big thanks to our sponsors for being here. Big thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. Charlotte's Web CBD. If you guys want to check them out, charlottesweb.com. This is where all the people start leaving. You start seeing the number just drop.
Stay there.
You can use the promo code Chewjitsu30 for 30% off the order at charlottesweb.com. You can also check out my buddy Matt. Supports a lot of young grapplers that are up and coming. Epic Roll, BJJ.com is the website. And again, gis, rash guards, shorts, t-shirts, whatever you're looking for. Promo code is Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order at epicrollbjj.com. If you guys want to support the podcast directly, you could do so by going to the Patreon, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. When you join, we have a whole exclusive library specifically for the podcast that you get access to, and you can get an ad-free version of the podcast if you'd like. And guys, if you want to get my daily email that I send out, which again goes into everything from jiu-jitsu training tips, lifting, diet stuff, just anything and everything I find interesting, including books I'm reading, you can get it at chujitsu.net/join, JOIN. And when you join, you'll get a couple of free gifts from me, and then you'll get my daily email that you can unsubscribe from at any point. But again, guys, thank you so much for being here. Hopefully this will give you some ideas to chew on. If you're just getting here late, then this will be up for you later on. Yep. You can go back and watch it. And again, you guys can tune into the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Every week on Mondays, we release the podcast where all podcasts are available on Mondays. So if you like listening to podcasts and you enjoy this one and you're not a regular listener, check us out on Mondays on your podcast app. And guys, we'll talk to you next time.